All right. Okay, so we talked about the Manchurian incident. We also talked about the invasion of Ethiopia. We mentioned this is by Italy. Then we mentioned the reoccupation of the Rhineland by Hitler. Hitler reoccupied the Rhine. His purpose in reoccupying the Rhineland is to gain back some of that power. He's trying to press, he's trying to push the League of Nations over the edge. If he pulls the League of Nations over the edge, then he won't have to, he just knows exactly how far he can push him before he has to actually go to war. The first thing he does is he breaks the Treaty of Versailles and reoccupies the Rhineland. Something he promised to do, not to do against France. Then, ladies and gentlemen, he moves into Austria. Austria wants him there. They unify. This is all review, so that's part of the reason why I'm going pretty fast. Okay, so Austria wants to reunify. They cheer in the streets when Hitler comes in. You guys have this written down already, by the way. I'm just saying. I know, but that's all. This whole page you should have written down. In 1907, Japan rapes Nanking by invading China. They raped Nanking, literally. They raped the women, they raped the children, they raped the city by taking all of its resources, by taking, destroying all of its factories or converting them into Japanese factories, etc., etc., etc. It's the first time the Japanese need to use force against a country that they're taking over, which means that this is the start of World War II in Asia. In September of 1938, Hitler continues his reoccupation of land that had once belonged to Germany. So they took over the Rhine, it used to belong to Germany. They took over Austria, they used to be united with Germany. And now it's taking over the Stigma, which also once belonged to Germany. In the Munich conference, he promises the League of Nations, Great Britain and France specifically, that he is happy with all of this and he will not invade Slovakia. 3 months later, he invades Czechoslovakia. This is a turning point because now he is not taking over Germans. He's taking over a foreign group, a different ethnicity, the Slovakians, and they don't want to be taken over. In all previous times, he was cheered in the streets for coming in. The Czechoslovakians are not cheered in the streets. Got it? Then we get to the invasion of Poland, which we alluded to with the causes of World War II. The reason why is because before World War I, Poland, part of it belonged to Russia, Empire of Russia, and the other part of it belonged to Germany. Both of these countries had signed a non-aggression pact in 1939, and they agreed to take over Poland. Germany attacks in September. September 27th, Germany has taken over all of Poland. Got it? Great. September 1939 to May 1940 is the phony war. Nobody's fighting. Why? Great Britain and France want to build up their army, prepare for war. Hitler wants to prepare his huge, amazing, fantastic, awesome plan for taking over all of Europe. First move of this is to actually take over France. He invades France, Belgium, and in May 1940. He takes over the Netherlands in 4 days. He takes over Belgium in 13 days. He takes over France in 6 weeks. Everybody got it? This is called the Blitzkrieg, a lightning-fast war. You guys got it? Everybody clear? Awesome-tastic. August 1940 to May 1941 is the Battle of Britain. It's the first non-victory for Germany. And because of the American Lend-Lease Act. The American Lend-Lease Act. President Roosevelt basically signs an act with Congress that says that the United States will aid economically and with military weapons, though not actually sending troops over, any country that's fighting against a dictator. So we simply made this against Hitler, Stalin, the Japanese dictators, and Mussolini. The rest of War II happens like this. Bye. At this point, the Battle of Britain is the first non-victory for Hitler. It's the first non-victory for Hitler. Up to this point, every country has fallen, surrendered, capitulated within a peace. Britain does not. It's because of the United States. Since Britain does not capitulate, they don't surrender, Germany's timetable is messed up. Make sense? Okay. Hitler had an attack the Soviet Union before the Soviet Union is completely ready for war. They know that Stalin will be ready at some point. Hitler makes sure it's not before Hitler can take them over. So he attacks the Soviet Union with Operation Barbarossa. Hitler violates the non-aggression pact he signed 2 years before by invading the Soviet Union. And this is one of his big mistakes. Now, at first, it seems like it's going to do well. He takes the Soviets all the way until the gates of Stalingrad. They pushed in all the way as far as they had taken over with the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. They're going to take over all the land they had once had at the just before the end of World War I. Make sense? Everybody got it? Okay. So, what he doesn't prepare for is the fact that his ally, Japan, is going to attack the United States. In December 1941, is attack on Pearl Harbor. It is not Germany that attacks the United States, it's Japan. This is the United States in war, and because Japan and Germany are allies, this brings the United States in the war against Germany. That's not what Hitler wants. He's not happy about it. April 1942, this is still a Bataan Death March, happens in the Philippines. Japan, during the time period after Pearl Harbor, they expected the United States Navy to be completely destroyed. It would take many, many months before that would be stopped. They assumed it would take many, many months. In reality, it only takes 6 months. Now, Japan does a lot of devastation, a lot of conquering in those 6 months. They conquer parts of Indonesia. They conquer parts of the rest of Oceania. They get further into China. They conquer the Philippines and take it away from the United States. In April of 1942, taking the Philippines away from the United States, have the Bataan Death March. Now, in war, soldiers are allowed to surrender, and they should be treated as prisoners of war. It's not paradise, they don't go on a vacation, but they shouldn't be tortured, and they certainly shouldn't die anymore. Does that make sense? Everybody got it? Bataan Death March, the Japanese marched the U.S. and foreign soldiers 15 miles. Of 70,000 soldiers, 16,000 died on the march. Okay. May 1942, the Allies attacked in Northern Africa, and some have seen a presentation today on the attack on Northern Africa, which also gave gateway into Italy. The reasons why they do this: first, they wanted to attack Erwin Rommel. This is Hitler's best general. And they also wanted to secure the Suez Canal, because Britain's greatest goal was to protect her colonies. By protecting the Suez Canal, it stopped Hitler from being able to get into the Indian Ocean unless he sailed all the way around Africa. Is that it? Marvelous. June 1942, the Battle of Midway is a huge turning point. 6 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States Navy is almost completely recovered. Japan tries to have another surprise attack on the United States. They want to make the United States believe they're going to be attacking Midway, and they want to pull all of the American ships out of Pearl Harbor, and they were going to fly their planes back towards Pearl Harbor and bomb all the ships away to Midway. Make sense? But because of Japanese-American code breakers that live in America, Japanese-American code breakers are able to break the code and tell the information to their military superiors. The United States, instead of Japan having a surprise attack on the U.S. has a surprise attack on Japan. After all the planes have left their aircraft, it leaves the Japanese warships like sitting ducks. They're waiting in the water. They can't do anything except with torpedoes. So, if the United States airplanes can soar in above them and start bombing, the way the Japanese planes had bombed Pearl Harbor, they create a huge, devastating loss. It's actually the first huge loss for Japan in World War II. This was revenge for Pearl Harbor. After that, August 1942 to February 1943 is the Battle of Stalingrad. And this is Hitler's first major loss because the Russian winters are very harsh, and the Soviets use it to their advantage, using a scorched earth policy that they used against Napoleon. During the summer and fall, whenever the Russians had retreated, they burned the earth behind them. Now, the Germans had expected to be able to use the land conquered to feed their soldiers while they were conquering the rest of Russia. But because of the scorched earth policy, they didn't have any food to just grab off the land. And the Russians weren't going to be giving them. Does that make sense? Now you have German soldiers in summer gear, like light jackets, in boots that were not made for snow, boots that are made for summer sun, and without food. They're freezing in the winter. So Hitler's men start dying, not just because the Russians are shooting at them, because the winters are so harsh. You guys get it? In addition, Stalin won't give up. Again, up until this point, most of the country has been conquering. They're willing to give up. They want to save lives. Stalin doesn't care about saving lives. He wants to make sure that Stalingrad does not fall. And so he's willing to put every single soldier and make it so that every single dies as long as Stalingrad does not fall. Got it? Okay. Same time, August 1942 to February 1943 is the Battle of Guadalcanal. And this is kind of the start of the island hopping campaign. In Asia, the Pacific theater of the war, the Japanese Empire is not as close, not landlocked and close like Germany. You just drop people in and then have them march to all the places that they need to conquer. You have to sail. It's a naval and airfare warfare. You have to go to each island and try to reconquer each island. Does that make sense? And so the United States starts with Guadalcanal, and it's going to take many, many months, nearly a year, before they're able to finally win Guadalcanal from the Japanese. It was such a devastating battle, it was almost like a loss. You guys get it? Okay. But what we learn, what we learn about the Japanese is that the way to get at them is to thoroughly and completely, they're not, the Japanese are so determined not to lose. They're to let their samurai die, like to give up all of their men. Every Japanese man is willing to die to the last. There's not a lot of surrenders. Does that make sense? You had to destroy them all. This puts into the idea of a massive weapon. It's the instant, it's part of the inspiration for moving the atomic bomb along faster. You guys got it? Okay. Can I move this up so we can see more of it? Okay. June 1944 is Operation Overlord. This is another turning point. It's the D-Day invasion. The Allied assault on German-occupied Europe. It goes on two fronts. You have first the storming the beach at Normandy. You have ideas, so army being traversed the navy, and they land on the beaches. And then you have the paratroopers dropping behind enemies and fighting like almost in like a scissor move to try to clamp the Germans together. Does that make sense? Everybody got it? Okay. And so you have brilliant tacticians working on this. Mark used these huge iron X's to keep the ships from coming in at tide, which forced the Allies to have to attack at low tide to lengthen the beach. Allowed shooting to kill more Allied soldiers as they try to storm the beach instead of being under the cover of the ocean and under the cover of the cliffs. But the Americans were smarter than Hitler, and they dropped paratroopers behind enemy lines to kind of come from their back. Attacking from behind. In 1944, hearing about the D-Day invasion, the Jews in the Warsaw ghetto have an uprising, hoping to rebel their Nazi guards and free themselves to help out in the war. Unfortunately, they lose, and the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto are liquidated, meaning they are eliminated to a man. They were shot on sight. You saw in Schindler's List when he was just shooting people after the ghetto, and they shot their fences. This is similar to the result of the Warsaw Uprising. But what it proved, first of all, it got the attention that there are people who are fighting against her from within. It also proves that the Jews are not just giving up. They weren't just turning over and saying, okay, you can just go ahead and kill us. December 1944 is the Battle of the Bulge, and it's the bloodiest battle of World War II, and it leads to the invasion of Germany. And generally what you need to know about the Bulge is that the Germans try to have the greatest defense by an offense. They're going to try to attack. They're trying to move back into the area they had once occupied. Does that make sense? This puts the Allies on defensive. And they have to try to hold this area, the Battle of the Bulge, so reinforcements can come. And they don't come until 95. Does that make sense? When they finally win the Battle of the Bulge, this leads to the invasion of Germany. So now you have Hitler completely on the run. You're not just attacking the lands that he had conquered and getting back. You're now trying to conquer Germany. This is different from what had happened in World War I. In World War I, they called an armistice and just stopped war. Germany was allowed to keep Germany under German hands. That would not be the case in World War II. Having learned their lesson with Hitler, the Allies are insisting that they are not just going to let Germany stop, conquer Germany and occupy. Everybody got that? Okay. This is an attack on the Nazi homeland. February 1945, they start the attack on the Japanese homeland, the Battle of Okinawa. It is an incredibly bloody battle. It reifies it. It underlines the idea that the samurai will continue to fight until they are all dead. This gives Roosevelt the idea that he will pull the trigger on the atomic bomb. Is that it? Okay, great. Unfortunately, he dies in April 1945. President Roosevelt dies in 1945, just 1 month before WWII in Europe Day. The Allied forces are victorious in Germany, and they're able to do it by literally taking over Berlin, the capital, taking over the haven up in the Austrian Alps, where Hitler had his vacation home. Does that make sense? They took over every spot of Germany in order to create victory in Europe Day. In August 1945, their generals in Asia tell the new president, President Truman, that if he continues his campaign as he's doing so, it will cost another 3 million American lives, because the Japanese will fight every single inch until all of them are dead. This is the assumption based on the Battle of Guadalcanal and the Battle of Okinawa. This convinces Truman that he needs to drop the atomic bomb. On August 6th and then on August 8th, they dropped the bomb. So they waited. August 6th, they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. On August 7th, they were hoping that Japan would surrender. When Japan did not surrender, they sent another on August 8th. Japan surrendered on August 9th, and we celebrate VJ Day, Victory in Japan Day. Let's not be ridiculous, people. Victory in Japan Day, in August 15th, 1945. After this, we have the Nuremberg trials. And this is for answering for the war crimes due to the Holocaust. Everybody clear? These are the events of World War II. If you have any further questions, ladies and gentlemen, my expectation is that you will come and see me during my office hours. I am happy to go over this information with you. Next class, we're going to be talking about the people in World War II. So I would study up on Hitler, Stalin. I would also study up on your presidents. Please turn on the light.